to God-Sized Story, Karl.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm very excited to have you on my show, and thank you so much for taking the time. You are one busy fellow.
We have been busy. It's been a busy season. In filmmaking, it's feast or famine, and we've been certainly busy of late.
Yes. Well, it looks like I was looking at your website and I have watched several of your productions, really. So this is very excited to talk to you. Of course, I didn't know about you, so I'm very happy to introduce you to my audience. I love to feature movies, and I talk to actors and producers and directors of several of the faith-based movies, and it's very exciting to get to meet you and introduce you to my audience. So I just want to first introduce you a little bit and tell a little about Karl Hortsmann. Did I say your name correctly?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Me and my accent, I always have to confirm.
You got it exactly right.
Good, good. Well, he is the director and director and producer. He's also the founder of Triple Horse Studios, which if you have watched faith-based movies, you have seen Triple Horse Studios in the credits and in the beginning of the movies. Of course, it's a very known studio, and actually right here around the corner from me in Atlanta. So I live in around the corner, kind of, because Atlanta is so huge. So, but I'm in the north side of Atlanta. I think Triple Horse is in the south side, right?
Yeah, we're southeast. Yes, right out Georgia 20, not far.
That's awesome. And Atlanta has become kind of like the Hollywood of the South, it seems like, in the past several years. So it's very exciting that faith-based studio is really booming right here in our town. I love that. But he's a director and producer of hundreds of television commercials that you have watched. Title sequences for Coca-Cola, Under Armour, Home Depot, major sports associations, and even the Olympics as well. So, but then he started featuring more on the movies as of late, and documentaries, including the NASCAR documentary, the making of champions, but then some of his notable credits include the Case for Christ, which I actually interviewed Lee Strobel not too long ago, and then Vanished, which I just watched, The Left Behind Next Generation. And then now we have just freshly released On a Wing and a Prayer. And that made me remember of my kids um, when they were little in school, their elementary years, they had to read that book, On a
Oh, wow.
Wing and a Prayer. So this is brand new, right? This is a brand new movie that you're producing.
It is. It's out now on Amazon Prime. It came out for Easter. It came out on Good Friday on Amazon Prime.
Nice. And it's featuring some big names, Dennis Quaid. Do you want to tell a little bit about On a Wing and a Prayer, since it's
Sure.
fresh and brand new?
Sure. Yeah, it's a true story of what happened to a family in 2011. A dad and a mom and two teenage daughters got on a King Air airplane. And for those not familiar, it's a small plane, but with two engines, fairly complicated when you add that second engine. So a pilot, a friend of theirs, had very graciously agreed to fly them home from the dad's brother's funeral. And on Easter Sunday morning, they got on the plane to go home, and the pilot died 2 minutes into the flight. He had a massive heart attack and passed away. And the dad, who had only ever thought about being a pilot, had not taken any real training at all, other than one quick Cessna, they call it a discovery flight, a while back. And he had already given up thinking about being a pilot. He had to try to land that plane. And he was very blessed and fortunate that there were a lot of people in air traffic control that morning in South Florida who were able to help him and talk him through the rigors of trying to land that plane. But you can imagine the terror that was going on, and the drama, the suspense that was happening with that family.
That's incredible. And there's also, of course, a faith component to this entire story, right? That's something that you focus on. pretty much all your productions. And is it doing really well on Amazon Prime? I'm assuming it is.
Yeah, we were very, very blessed. It was the number one streaming movie on there on Amazon Prime for the Easter weekend, and it has stayed up in the top five ever since. So we're very fortunate that the audience have found it and turned out and seemingly have been telling each other about it because it's still staying right up there, right around Top Gun and the latest George Clooney movie. So we're very blessed that it's hanging in there.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
incredible. I love that movie, by the way. It is a ladies' movie, I have to say. Especially
Uh,
ladies of like my generation, we love him. So we can have
oh, so good, so good.
well, and then I my audience is gonna remember that not long ago I interviewed Richard Blackaby for about his brand new Bible of the Experiencing God Bible, and I just saw that you actually are featuring a movie based on a story that he told on my interview about the prison in Angola. So that is so exciting because that was one of my favorite stories that he told about how experiencing God has been impacting people all over the world. So it's in development, right?
That's
So
right.
uh,
We've got a screenplay that we're working on. I was just with Richard a couple of weeks ago working on the project, and he's very hands-on, helping us be sure that we've got the messaging just right against this fantastic story of where God used the Experiencing God Bible study to spark this wildfire that changed the lives of so many prisoners and guards and families around the Louisiana State Penitentiary down in central Louisiana. And it went from the most violent prison in America. They were the largest maximum security prison in America as well. And God just turned it around, breathed life and hope and redemption into that place. And it caught fire. And ultimately, they were graduating people from seminary that was set up there at the prison and sending them out two by two to prisons all over the state of Louisiana. And it not only transformed that prison, but it was influential into the transformation of several others. And it's just a fantastic story. We're very excited about it. So we're very early on in it, but we are working hard.
that is exciting. So you guys are just beginning the beginning of the project. So
Right.
you're not filming it yet, nothing
Not
like
filming
that.
yet. We're finishing up the screenplay and working on distribution and financing and all those pieces that we have to put into place before we actually start filming.
That is so exciting. I will not miss that one because I am a big fan of the Blackabees and especially the Experiencing God. A Bible study was a Bible study that I've done probably 15 years ago, and it was pretty revolutionary in my Christian life, my walk life. And so anyway, I can't wait to watch that. That's incredible. So, but Carl, I know that the name of my show is God Sized Stories. So I know yours is one, right? And I know that you probably one of those kids that loved movies and wanted to get into movie making. Tell us a little bit, how did you get into this beautiful story of doing now movies that are honoring Christ?
Well, I was raised in the faith from an early age, and I had set out to be a professional ball player, I thought, and I didn't quite have what it took to make it to the major leagues. I was a baseball player. So I quickly, and I'm thankful for that. I didn't spend 10 years bouncing around before I figured it out. At a young age, I figured out that I didn't have the chops and went and worked at a local church in the television department as the hey, go do that guy. And then they needed somebody on camera one Sunday morning, and then they needed somebody to edit. And so after, serving there for a couple of years, God opened the door for me to go to Turner Broadcasting back in the 90s when Ted Turner was still running the place. And I was fortunate. It was a God's favor was with me. And when I went in there as a young editor, they just were exploding with growth and starting new networks, one after the other, Cartoon Network and Turner Classic Movies. So they promoted from within, and us kids who didn't know any better would just stick our hand up and say, "Oh yeah, we can do that," whether we could or not. Didn't matter. And so we learned the hard way. And I will say that the management at Turner was patient with us and gave us a tremendous amount of opportunity and an opportunity to learn and to grow. And so I was very thankful for my time there. And I spent 7 years at Turner, kind of working in the trades. Started as an editor, and left as a director. That's I learned to direct there.
Don't you just love like how God just sometimes I keep saying this in my interviews because it's one of my favorite parts of my job is to interview these people that, people think, oh my goodness, oh, look at all that he's doing or he's done, he's accomplished. But then when you understand it, it's just like one step of obedience at a time, right? You just walk with Christ. It's just, I think about that Bible verse in Psalms that says that your word is a lamp into my feet. And when you study the context of that lamp, is that little kerosene lamp that literally in the darkness of the desert would only shine enough light for the next step. If
Mm.
you raise it up, you couldn't see anything around you, in the dark deserts or in the dark times, there was no light posts on the streets. And so it's just like that's exactly right. You just say yes to one thing and then God opens another and another. And here you are. How many years later, Carl?
Oh goodness, 30 years later, I think, from those early days at Turner.
Oh, I
Uh,
thought you were just 35, Carl.
oh,
Come
I
on.
like that. I like your thinking there, Patricia. Thank you.
Oh, well, that is incredible. What a wonderful story. Well, I hear that your purpose in life, you feel like your purpose is to share stories of hope. So, for those of my in my audience who don't know your work, can you share some of the stories that you have already been able to feature?
Sure. So you mentioned a couple. The Case for Christ was certainly one. The Lee Strobel story. I did one recently that had a short theatrical release and is already available on television on Up TV. It was called Southern Gospel. True
Mhm.
story of a pastor in the '60s, the 1960s, who his dad was also a pastor, and he had decided he didn't want any part of that lifestyle, and he had gone astray and had really started gaining success as a rock and roller in the late '60s. And on the very night that he signed his big record contract deal, he was traveling back from the concert where that had happened. There was a car accident, and one of the band members was sadly killed, and another one was burned pretty badly. And there was drugs and alcohol involved, and his life was changed forever. And he decided through that traumatic incident that he realized that this was a second chance that God was giving him. And he stepped back and went back himself to study, to become a pastor, and to ultimately start a church in Central Florida that is still thriving today. It's a very large 3,000 plus member church. And we did that story and shot that and released that. And it's a great story of God's redemptive love.
Yeah, and also what I love about it is because a lot of people don't read books, right? But everybody loves a good movie.
Right.
So that is one of the things that I love about the faith-based industry is that, and as of probably the last 20 years, really, really intensively in the last 10 years or so, we're seeing more and more and more of these incredible productions that are bringing stories that people may not read in a book, but they would certainly go and watch on TV. So tell me a little bit about this momentum that we're living right now in the faith-based filmmaking, and how do you think that we can as viewers support this?
Well, I think we're seeing the quality has come so far thanks to so many people who had started years ago in the faith space with not a lot of experience or expertise, but they had a heart and they followed God, like you mentioned, that one step in front of the other and just doing what God put in front of them. And I think a lot of those people paved the way for where we are today with faith-based films and films that feature people of faith. And a lot of the stories that we do, we did a documentary about some Navy SEALs that were tragically killed in Afghanistan, but it really centers
Mhm.
around one family and their faith and how they turned that tragedy into hope. Even though the documentary is about so much more than that, it really centers around that. So we have the opportunity to show people of faith dealing with everyday life and crisis and sometimes tragedy, but how they deal with it maybe differently than a lot of the stories that we've been seeing for so many years coming out of secular Hollywood. So we're blessed to do that. And I think to answer your question, faith film has finally achieved in Hollywood a genre status. So I think a lot of the financiers and the distributors and the gatekeepers see film projects now the same way they see a romantic comedy or a horror film or a thriller. They just see it as another legitimate genre that has a built-in audience. And it's because the audience has been so responsive. They've gone out on those opening weekends, which are so critical to movies that are opening in theaters. Like just recently, our friends, the Irwin brothers, put out the fantastic film Jesus Revolution, and
Yes, I
the
loved it.
fans turned out. That weekend was a big opening weekend, which helped propel that film to stay in theaters longer, which means more and more people have opportunity to see it. Not just in theaters, but because it does well in theaters, it has a much longer life in the world of streaming and television. So by going and supporting films early, whether they release in theaters or they release on Amazon Prime, like our film On a Wing and a Prayer, by supporting that when it first comes out, it really prolongs the life of the film and helps people it's more accessible and more people will see it, and hopefully more people will be touched by it.
Absolutely. And, I interviewed probably a month ago Dallas Jenkins from The
Mm.
Chosen, so now that momentum, it looks like it's also coming to the series, to television, with The Chosen kind of being the front runner of all of this movement. Do you see that this is a possibility as well? We're going to start having more and more faith-based like series for the television as well?
I do think so. I think we're seeing that more and more, and certainly God's favor and blessing on The Chosen and what Dallas and his team have done down there and are continuing to do. I think they're on their fourth season. They're filming
Mhm.
now, I
Yeah, they
think.
are.
And so that has just been a phenomenal story that just has really opened the eyes again to these gatekeepers and distributors and financiers and studios, that not only can faith projects work in the film space, they can also work in television and series. So I do think we're going to see more and more of those. And even our studio has a few in development now too, to try to continue to expand the message.
One of the things that I think is so exciting is because, when you think about movies and television and theater, there's for us believers, right? For the parents and stuff. When you have a child, it's like, oh, I want to be an actress. I want to be an actor. You always, at least my kids are older. So when they were little, it's like, the industry, the
Mm.
industry is just so dark and there's just so much. So it's very exciting because there are so many creatives in the Christian environment, right? So many kids who just absolutely love acting and everything else. So it's a wonderful opportunity for these kids to use their gifts and and even fulfill their dreams and not have to walk a lifestyle or to live a lifestyle that is against what they believe. So that's one of the most exciting things to me because back years ago, if your child say, I want to be an actress, you're like, right?
Right, right. No, I understand. And you're right. I think there's a great opportunity for people of faith to act and to bring their talent and skills to these films. But too, I think if God's called them to be actors and they're well grounded in their faith, I think that's important for all of us. Regardless of what we're called to be grounded in our faith, know what we believe, and be
Mhm.
bold that when asked, we can articulate that and can speak that. I think our ministry as filmmakers in the faith space starts right at the front door. I tell our folks that when we cast a film or when we're crewing up for a film, everybody on that show, we feel that God is bringing to us. We try to make the best selections. We don't always choose whether or not they're believers. We really just
Mhm.
look for the best talent and who's available to us to help tell that story. And we have found that ministry happens right on set. So many times people of various faiths or of no faith have been on our sets, and they've often pulled people aside and said, hey, there's something different here. And we know, as believers, that's the Spirit, that's the Holy Spirit, that's what they're feeling.
Mhm.
And we are blessed to be able to be emissaries of the Lord right there in production, and take that very seriously as our first place to do that. And so these actors, like you mentioned, these young Christian kids and people getting into acting, it's the same thing. They can be on a Nabisco commercial, and some
Mhm.
people may be believers, some not, and then they can turn right around and be on a faith-based film where there's a bit more of that from management, and have an opportunity to share their testimony as God opens the doors.
And we have so many examples already in the industry of men, some of them who I have the pleasure to interview. as well, of people who have been cast for all types of work, like Jim Caviezel, Stilio
Mhm.
Savante, just some of the people that I've talked to, that they are just they have done an incredible impact in the industry in general, and their faith is so strong. And then they are able to share their faith. It's very true. We are to be light in the darkness, right? So we
That's
we
right.
we shouldn't be just hanging out with the Christian boys. But I will say that for the younger actors and actresses, it's pretty cool to be able to have an opportunity to also work within the faith-based industry. That's really cool.
It
Well,
is.
so I know that years of filmmaking, you must have a lot of fun stories, a lot of great stories to share. Is there like one that stands out in particular, like a favorite fun story, something that was a gift that you received or something like that?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story that happened on The Case for Christ. It was an impactful story. I had worked on that film with several technicians and crew members that I had known for 20 years. Many of them I had known for a long time, and they had all come alongside to help make that film as good as it could be. And about two-thirds of the way through the film, the first assistant director came to me at lunch and said, I feel like we're in the doldrums here, and our crew could really use a pick me up. And we were shooting at our studio here in Atlanta, and the AD, the first AD, the assistant director, suggested that what if we were to have right after lunch? Do you think we could take a half hour off the schedule and show some clips to the crew that wants to see where we are and what we've been filming? Because so often we're filming and the crew doesn't see anything put together. They just see the pieces as they're filmed. So we thought that was a great idea, and we invited everyone at the end of lunch that anyone who wanted to could come to the screening theater here on the property and take a look at where we were. And the place filled up. We had over 100 and some people into the room to watch, and only God could do this. We had no idea. It was not planned. We had just, when that idea kind of germinated, we called the editor and said, hey, pull together 3 or 4 scenes that are edited and let's show them. So we did, and one of the scenes that at the very last scene that we showed in that little screening session was the scene where Lee Strobel has the realization that his debunking of Christ was in vain, and that he had come to this moment where it was real to him. And we shared that with the crew, and I can't tell you, Patricia, how many people came to me after, and I witnessed some of the hardened people I have worked with, some people that were atheists and agnostics, just from various places in their worlds, had they were moved by it, and it affected them. And I think it was the Holy Spirit planting seed of the light of Jesus. And it was such a neat moment. People were crying, and I don't know that we got back to work for another hour, but it was a great time, and it was really an opportunity to see God at work right there in that darkened theater.
That is so, so exciting. That is an incredible movie. My stepdad is an atheist.
Mm.
And I don't think, I'm from Brazil originally, so that's where and they don't speak English. So I'm hoping that they can get that movie into the Portuguese language. I don't think it is there yet, because that's an incredible story of what the Lord has done with his life. And it was beautifully done, by the way. Beautifully
Oh,
done.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. A great team of people. Thank you. I'll pass
Yeah,
the word.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, let me ask you, like, tell us how we can get connected with you, find out more what you're working on. How can we support you in any way so that you continue to do this amazing job for the kingdom?
Oh, well, thank you. They can check us out and see what projects we've got going on at our website, triplehorse.com. Or they can just look it up on IMDb. If they're into the Internet Movie Database, we're there. They can look up either Triple Horse or me and see what we've got coming down the pike.
That's awesome. Well, we're coming to an end of our interview, Carl, and I really have enjoyed talking to you. I wanted you to talk to that one person out there who may be listening, and they may have a dream of either being an actor or a producer, or they have this dream in their heart, or it may be something completely different. And they're thinking, I don't know how to start this, I don't know how to go, where to go, who to talk to them and encourage them and how to pursue their dreams?
I think, put it before the Lord, I think is first and foremost. Ask the Lord to show you and to reveal to you what his plans are for you. And then don't be afraid to recognize that when he gives you the desires of your heart, or when his will is aligned with yours, it's a great gift. And to pursue that every day, and don't use excuses not to know how to do the next thing. Do what you said, Patricia. Get up every day with that light that you can see one step in front of you, and take that step. I'm reminded that the children of Israel were given the promised land, but God still required them to get up every day and put on the armaments and go onto the battlefield. And some days he required them to fight, and other days he would just deliver them miraculously, as he did in Jericho. So every day we have to get up and get onto that battlefield armed up with the armor that God has given us, and not be afraid to show up. I think that's the key. Show up every day ready for the battle, and then look to what God is doing, look to that horizon, and go to what God is doing, and be involved with whatever that is. And let those divine appointments that God has for you come together, because God will introduce you to the right people. He'll make the opportunities manifest himself before you. So I would just say, be encouraged that when you walk with God, every day is an adventure, and every day will lead you to what God has called you to.
I love that. That's wonderful advice. It's just what Psalm says, you delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart, right? And that's
Exactly.
exactly right. Well, what a pleasure it was talking to you, Karl. And I just really wishing you the very best. I love what you do, love your work, and just may God continue to bless you and just send you more and more incredible stories to tell.
Thank you so much, Patricia, and thank you for a great interview. It was wonderful.
Wonderful. Well, I hope to talk to you soon again.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
God bless. Bye.